with Startup Grind, we always have this constant question we ask. Who was Mark Turrell in childhood, and what made him the person you are now? So tell us about the interesting background you have, starting from your childhood, from your school, and maybe university years, and then...
It feels as though I should be on a couch right now, lying back. Tell me about your childhood.
Yes, exactly. Imagine. I am afraid.
So I was born in Toronto, Canada. My parents come from South Africa. I grew up in England. So I've always been an immigrant my entire life. I now live, obviously, in Berlin. Obviously.
Why obviously?
Stuff. And every week I'm in a different country.
Okay.
There's a point in your life, and all of you, but like it's probably around the sort of early 30s, that you'll have a chance to, you work out what makes you happy and what makes you sad, and then you should design your life to do the things that make you happy and don't do the things that make you sad. It's not more complicated than that. As a child, so I left Canada when I was 5 years old. Oh, by the way, I don't do small talk, so I've made an exception for this question, but I never do small talk. Because people don't care.
Yeah. Okay.
But also because I don't do small talk, I spend lots of time talking to myself. So I always have a piece of paper and a pen. And when I go out, I typically like getting inspiration. I go out night clubbing. I don't know if you have any nightclubs here. I haven't been yet. I've only been here one evening.
Ask boys,
But then I would normally be out, and rather than doing small talk and banal, blah, 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 where are you from, blah, 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 what's your favorite food? Nobody gives a damn. Right now, then, I would rather talk and invent things and stuff. But I will fill in the gaps. So I grew up in England. I was thinking that I used to be fairly normal, but probably not. When I was 7 years old, my parents divorced, and they decided to treat me as an adult. Well, I was 7. I don't want to be an adult. So I came up with this really good thing that I recommend you all do. I created a box in my head for bad things.
For what thing?
Bad things.
Bad, okay.
So anything that would be said to me that I didn't want to hear, I would allow the words to go into my head. They'd go into the box, and then I'd close the box. Now, you don't want to have a box full of monsters. Not a good idea. So then you open the box on a regular basis just to see the box of monsters. So then they're not monsters. And right now, this is just a way of... so I used to play chess really, really well. And the logic in chess is protect the king. So I was the king in this particular case. So nothing is allowed to hurt me ever. Great. And so there's just a number of mental structures that I developed even as a 7-year-old child and then beyond that helps you do interesting things.
Wow, great. Do you want to ask a question? When I open your LinkedIn profile, or anywhere you Google Mark Turrell, so many interesting things come up. I don't know, neuroscience, economics, scaling, growth, networks, changing the world, yes, open relationships, etc. So maybe some things don't come up, but maybe you can tell some interesting stories related to all these keywords and how these keywords came up in your profile and, made you the person today.
And if I fill in some gaps, so I went to school in England and I had a very normal school. I did school so that I could go to university. I could do university because I wanted to do something in business, but I had no clue. I then graduated in 1990. Oh, by the way, I'm a 12-year-old child. My human body on this planet is 48, but I'm a 12-year-old child. Okay? So bear with me if I get distracted. When I was graduated, when I was 21, there was a recession. And I thought, well, okay, I can't be bothered to go work, and there's no jobs anyway. So I did a 1-year master's program in Paris. Now, I sat next to a very, very lovely, very smart German girl, and we're still together now after 28 years. Absolutely brilliant. I then thought, well, okay, I can't be bothered to go work, so I did another 1-year master's program then in Berlin. I then thought my girlfriend was going to do a PhD, and I thought, oh, that's brilliant, not working for another 3 years, I'll do that too. So then I did a PhD. When I went to do my PhD, I met my professor, who I'd done with before, and so I was the kind of... if you're a lecturer, I'm the kind of student that lecturers love and hate at the same time, because I would get usually an incredibly good grade, but I'm completely useless the entire year. but I work out how systems work, and I got 100% in my project that was worth 30% of the whole degree. Sneaky. So when I met my professor, so I've decided I'm going to do a PhD. My professor of IT in London, he knows that I'm a problematic student. But the thing is that we were talking about using computers, and my professor was just getting a meeting with the head of Intel Europe to do a consulting project. Well, I was asked to please stay for another half an hour. And so at the end of this magical hour, not only am I going to do a PhD, but Intel is going to pay for it and pay my expenses and have a part-time job at Intel, hooked up in an hour. Now, everything in life, it turns out, is actually quite easy. It's the mentality. So I then created my first software business when I was 24. I then almost went bankrupt in 6 months. How many of you have done business studies? Terrible degree. What they don't teach you about is cash flow. So you can do strategy for Procter & Gamble, like first start with $1 billion and end with 200 million. We can do that. But right now, so I created my business and I immediately almost went bankrupt because I just didn't get any revenue and I spent it all. I realized quite quickly that if you're going to start off in business, and how many of you got your own business or would like to? Oh, now, by the way, this is really important. You will never make money out of a salary ever. So now let's say, let's imagine if you earned 50,000 euros a year. Now, is this a good salary here? Okay. How many years will it take you if you earn 50,000 euros a year to net 1 million euros? Never. Yeah, never. Actually, the answer is never. Correct. If you earn 200,000 euros a year, it'll take you 25 years.
Unless you rob a bank or something.
Or own the bank. Easier. Head of compliance. So the thing is that the only way to actually make substantial wealth is to create something. Now, it's interesting being like in a startup place like this, most of your startups won't work. And you know this, but that's okay. The thing is that gradually, now, if you believe me, you wouldn't be here. So clearly you believe that you have something special that can make it work. You're wrong. If you still don't believe me, then you at least have a chance of being successful. It's really tricky. So I created my first business at 24, almost went bankrupt in 6 months. At the end of this thing where I owed £10,000 to the bank, which was worth a lot of money in those days, because Britain wasn't so crazy then, I then said, well, okay, I will pay back the £10,000 of debt. I will have at least 10,000 in my bank account, and I'll have a regular income coming in the next 12 months, or I will give up and join a consulting firm, which for me would have been abject failure. Well, I achieved it in 10 months. I like targets. I like numbers. We'll get into some, I just like numbers. So I don't care about money, don't care about things, I just like numbers. So I then created a company. I then ended up taking public this company. So I did an IPO in the London Stock Exchange in 2006. 36. Unbelievably hard. Like, it's amazingly hard. Of course, when one of my buddies was a lawyer, I went to school with him, and he said, well, you could go public. I said, yeah, that's a great idea, I'll do that. He said, it'll take you 18 months and cost you $500,000. I said, no, it won't. It did. And I got lucky. And so I took my company public in 2006. That was weird because my entire life I'd been in massive amounts of debt my entire life. I've never actually owned a house. I've never actually owned a car. I've never owned any asset. Whenever I've had extra money, I've always used it to either borrow more money as collateral and then spent it, or hired people to build another thing. I can't work for anybody. Anybody. I'm like, I do not do what I'm told. I'm here now, but so it's you were persuaded. Yeah. So right now, but if you like, my whole life changed. In middle of 2007, I was nominated a technology pioneer by the World Economic Forum. Now, do you all know World Economic Forum, Davos, and... We know that's in Davos. Yeah, Davos stuff. So... Yeah, but of course, if you use their logo, they get very angry because they're stupid. They're very stupid people. We get into that. So right now, so this meant that I was going to achieve my lifetime's goal. By the way, who here would like to get whatever you want? Who here would like to get whatever you want? Actually, who wouldn't is not an answer, that's a non-answer. So, okay. Now, first of all, be very careful what you wish for. So when I was already a teenager, my mother asked me to say, okay, Mark, have you decided what you'd like to be when you grow up? Well, clearly I haven't grown up. But so, what would I like to be? So I said, I'd like to be the CEO of a company. And so she looked around, we were in the kitchen, she looked underneath, you opened up the thing underneath the sink, and she pointed at a bucket and a sponge. She said, okay, you can have your own window cleaning business. Then you can be the CEO, head of marketing, head of finance, head of accounts, head of compliance. Be very careful what you wish for. But okay, so I will give you the secret to get whatever you want. So there are 3 things that you need to know. The first is that you need to work out what it is that you want. Now, some of you aren't at that stage yet. Some of you don't know what it is that you want. That's totally fine. Sometimes it'll take you a year or 2 or 5 years of floating around. That's totally fine. But let's say that you've imagined what you want and you need to sort of sense check it. Does it make sense? Next thing is you need to give yourself a time frame. When do you want to achieve this thing by? So I like birthdays. So I remember when I was 30, I wanted to be worth £3 million in 3 years. Because I was born on the 3rd of the 3rd and I like threes. Numbers. And I was. So, but the third thing is the most important thing of all. So you know what it is that you want. You have a time frame. The key thing is to tell as many people as possible what it is that you want. Because we live in a world of abundance. And in the world of abundance, the odds that you will meet somebody that will help you is 100%. We just don't know who, and we don't entirely know when. And by the way, this might be weird to people, so there's some spooky mathematics that I need to give you all now. So I'd like you to do a little mathematics thing. So if there are 30 people in a room, what is the percentage likelihood of 2 or more people sharing a birthday of day and month? Who thinks it's a small number? Like 5% or less? Put your hand up. People? How many people think more like 10%-ish? Okay. How many people think more like 25? How many people think over 50%? I know the right answer. So, anybody know the correct answer? No, so 1 over 50 would be a very small number. It's actually a very big number. It's 71%.
It's based on historical data?
No, it's Bayesian mathematics. So, actually, we'll do a quick test. Well, I'm only going to ask 5 people. So my birthday is the 3rd of March. Anybody here 3rd of March? Serious? No, you're just like, I could. When is your birthday?
24th of February.
24th of February. Anybody else 24th of February? No? Okay. When is your birthday?
July 16th.
July 13th? Okay, no match. When is... Sorry?
No match.
No match?
It
We'll do
doesn't
2
work.
more. One? August 8th? No match. Most people, you're all thinking you're pretty smug right now. And when is your birthday, sir? When is your birthday of day and month? August 27th? No match. Now, in our heads...
Send us your birthdays after the event.
In our heads, we're egotistical. And we think, what are the odds of somebody matching our birthday, which is the 1 in 365? It's the wrong mathematics. We're not looking at the odds of a specific match, we're looking at the odds of any match. And in the world of abundance, the odds of any match goes up dramatically. So right now we have 5 people trying to match against 60. Fine. 6 against 59, and in the world of abundance, the odds of getting a match goes up dramatically. Now, I decided in Davos to play the numbers. I'll tell a little story of Zimbabwe, if that's okay.
About Davos?
Yeah.
You want to... Actually, I wanted to ask something. So, it seemed like the world was quite kind to you, like tens of millions, IPOs. I don't know.
I lost everything.
Okay.
I lost $15 million.
So I was going to ask why you decided to change the world. So obviously you lost. That's why. So you started a few years ago. So we are at the day number what?
4,100.
4,100 something of changing the world. So maybe you can tell about this.
So, okay, so now if you picture this, so I've been a startup entrepreneur my entire life, and I've been in debt my entire life. I had 16 cards and bank cards, and none of them had any money in. Ever. So right now, I went public, I had some millions, and I had a few hundred K sitting in the bank account. When the World Economic Forum nominated me a tech pioneer, I realized that I could get whatever I want, and I decided to reset my life to say, I exist to change the entire world for better. All of it, at the same time, ideally without anybody knowing that it's me, because it makes it dramatically harder, and that fits my personality. Now, it's an ideal state, clearly I'm having to tell you now. I then decide that I will give myself 6 weeks to invent a plan. I then tell my partner, for 28 years now, I said, look, I'm going to change 4 million people's lives, directly or indirectly, in the next 4 years. And she, because she knows me very well, she said, add a 0 onto it. Okay. I need a plan to change 40 million people's lives for the better in 4 years. Not a problem. I just need a different set of tactics. So I invent a plan to change the world, but at this point, I don't know if I'm crazy. And I'm sure many of you back here, probably at least half of the room, particularly if you're in startup world, are thinking, oh my God, this is the most inspiring thing I've ever heard. You don't know what the plan is yet, and you don't know if I've done anything. People get inspired of nothing. Like this empty glass, which will be empty soon, if I can get a refill, it'd be nice, can inspire people and bring people to tears. It's pathetic. But okay, so I then go to Davos, and then I talk to 150 people, playing the numbers, to say, hey, I have a plan to change the world, do you need any help? Now, I'm also trying to sell $1 million pieces of software, because my software company was at $10 million annual revenue, I had 40 employees, like serious stuff. On the third day of Davos, on Thursday morning, I meet a guy from Zimbabwe. And we're on the shuttle bus ride, and he says, look, if you have a plan to change the world, we're really desperate in Zimbabwe. So I meet him again at 10 o'clock. I finally have a cup of coffee. I've been out partying a little bit. So he said, look, in Zimbabwe, we're fighting an election in 5 weeks. And we know that we'll win the election because the opposition, the people hate Robert Mugabe, the nasty dictator. You've probably had something like that here, maybe. But we know that the election is guaranteed to be stolen because the whole system is totally corrupt. We would like to have a fair count of the vote, and if we, the opposition, get 50% of the vote, we can get into government and can make changes. Constraints, though, 5 weeks to go, 0 budget, and if anybody finds out what's going on, including Morgan Tsvangirai, his boss, the leader of the opposition, everybody will be murdered. Can you help? And I said, well, as we're making some confessions, I need to confess myself. I don't know where Zimbabwe is. I don't know anything about elections. And I've only had 2 hours of sleep because I was partying until 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm probably still wasted. But the fact that you're asking me means you're desperate. And I believe that I can fix anything. So, oh, by the way, I asked him one question. Can you guess my first question to this guy?
No. How much?
How many people live in Zimbabwe? Correct. Because I have a 40 million target. Okay. 13 million people, okay, fantastic. If I do this project for you, I do 30% of my target, of course I will help you. So at this point, I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot. I like being an idiot, which means that I ask 12-year-old questions, like, how will the bad guy cheat in an election? Well, it turns out the way you cheat is the cheapest way possible with the least amount of risk. And in the case of Zimbabwe at that time, you buy off the head of the election commission. So you buy the result. And you don't need to cheat at ground level because you already know what the result is. But that meant the vote was honest. And across 9,000 polling stations in Zimbabwe, people honestly voted and had their votes counted. Well, my background is in collective intelligence. How do you tap into the brain power of large numbers of people to get them to go do stuff? So right now, I thought if there are 9,000 polling stations and the results are put on the front door of the polling station when the results close, I want to be everywhere at the same time. Good. So therefore, I asked him, how many people have camera phones in Zimbabwe? Well, it was around 2/3 had even bad Nokia or Ericsson phones. Now this means that I have virtual eyes and ears. Well, now I need a way of getting 1,000 people. That took 30 minutes. So there's something called a network hijack. So you find a network of people that exist, like Startup Grind is a great network. As an example, you can hijack this thing. Hello, people online. So right now, you can hijack an existing network and get them to go do stuff. Now, the next thing is that most people trying to do good don't think like bad people. I'm sure that none of you here are bad people. However, you need to learn to think like them, because your plans will get destroyed by bad people if you're doing anything that's interesting. So I mentioned this to my buddy from Zimbabwe. Oh, by the way, he became the Deputy Prime Minister of Zimbabwe, so good guy. I said, okay, let's think like a bad person. So the opposition had 15,000 supporters. I then thought, if I was a bad guy in Zimbabwe, I would have spies in the opposition party. I might even have bought the opposition party. Simple. But I said, okay, what is the odds that there's a spy? 100%. What happens if a spy finds out, people get killed? So now we have a thing that is likely to happen, and if it happens, it's really bad. Therefore, we need to have a contingency plan. So right now, what I said is, let's ask 15,000 supporters of the opposition, do you have a camera phone, and will you help? But we didn't tell them what they were supposed to do. On the day of the election, bring your camera phone, which they did. After the elections closed, take a picture of your results. 1,000 people did that, including all of the spies. Because anybody that was a spy who didn't take a picture, we knew was a spy. Easy. What it meant was that 10 students were sitting in an office in Johannesburg, and they turned the pictures into a big spreadsheet. And sure enough, within 3 hours, without any budget, without any blood being spilled, we counted over a third of the votes in Zimbabwe. The opposition was winning by 66%, and mathematically, Robert Mugabe could not win. He lost that election by 50.4%, and it changed the outcome of an entire fucking country. That took me less than an hour on day 2 of my 25-year plan. I'm currently in day 4,100 and something, and it's going perfectly according to schedule. But then the thing is that once you realize you can do this thing, nothing is real. You've been sitting here listening to me for what, half an hour? 20 minutes? In the last half an hour that you've been sitting here, how far have you physically moved in terms of meters or kilometers? A lot. What is a lot? 1 kilometer? Okay. Anybody have a different answer? How much more? I don't know what very much means. Now this is interesting. So in the last 30 minutes, we've gone 650 kilometers. Yes, exactly. Sometimes it gets dark outside and sometimes it's bright. That's because we live on a planet called the Earth and it spins. So even if you didn't notice it, you have gone physically 650 kilometers, and you've also gone 400,000 kilometers because we go through the Milky Way at 800,000 kilometers per hour. Now, what it means is that your view of physical reality is wrong. Completely wrong. There is nothing is real. Like the red on your scarf isn't red. It's every color apart from red, and your brain interprets it. You've never touched anything in your entire life. Protons exchange, and there's an electromagnetic. Nothing is real. But what I realized then at this point...
simulation, you are also by the theory?
No, I'm not. Then you're into philosophy. So I don't do philosophy. I'm an entrepreneur. And as an entrepreneur, if nothing is real, this means that I can change everything. And if you do some cool shit, then you can bend reality and people follow your reality because it's more fun. So yeah, that was a long... I can't remember the question now.
Actually, so based on what you just said, and you actually happened to meet about like a dozen of startups and different entrepreneurs here during this last few days. What do you think, how do we perceive this reality in Armenia, how these guys are doing business-wise, thinking-wise, and perspective-wise? Do you see some kind of patterns? Do you see something that's really provocative for you? Or it's straightforward, but maybe, effective? I don't know, just your observation about what you have seen here.
So it's quite, you're what, 3 million people. So you can't, and you have an alphabet that nobody else understands. It's okay, it's good, I've been learning. None of you can make money locally. You have to only be international. You cannot make any money locally, you just can't. So even if I was running an event here, fine, people pay their $3 to get in. At the end, I get $36. Well, how much does that buy you? Not a lot. So right now, for all of you looking at businesses, you need to make money internationally. Now that means you need to get into their heads of international customers to work out what they want, what they need, and give them that. Now people I would be inspired now for you from Estonia, because Estonia is half the size of you, and they've done some phenomenal companies. There's no reason why it couldn't be done here. But there's another thing, can I borrow you all for a little test? Is that okay? So, this is a very, very, very important test, okay? So you know the letter Q, as in quick, queen, so you know the circle with the line? I'd like everybody to get their finger, everybody get a finger, and draw the letter Q on your forehead. Q. Okay, good, okay, and you? Okay, good. All right. Fascinating, okay, yes, I see yours, there, okay. Okay, so how many of you drew it this way? Yeah, this side was all this way, okay. How many of you did it that way? This is called the Q test. It has been kind of validated. Now, what it shows is how you see the world. If you do the letter Q this way, it's wrong for you and right for everybody else. This means you really care what other people think. So when your parents tell you, no, you shouldn't do that, you think, oh my God, you're right. If you do the letter Q this way, now you may know that it's wrong, you may not have thought about it, it may have been so spontaneous. The thing is that if you do your Q this way, and you did that this way, you're more likely to be independent-minded, open-minded. Even if it's wrong for others, you don't care. Now, this could be bad as well. I'm like, by the way, there's no right. Like somebody like, hell yeah, that doesn't quite work. But right now, it's a really good way about how you see the world. Now, the thing is that if you do your Q this way, people will take advantage of you, obviously. Because if I know that you help, actually, can I get another glass of wine, please? And you'll be, oh, sure. Whereas a person does it this way would say, no, but I'll sell it to you. Entrepreneurial. So I see that Armenia, the other nice thing, actually, who here would like to know the secret to the whole world? Donkeys. Donkeys, what's the Armenian word for donkey? Esh, okay, esh. So esh, donkeys are the secret to the whole world. So in behavioral science, we're taught that people do things because of individual motivation, and we have the logic of the carrot and the stick. So people do things because they have a promise of a reward or the threat of nasty punishment. The thing is, for actual donkeys, there's something that works much more powerfully to get actual donkeys to do things. That's a carrot. It's not a carrot. What would it be? Survival would be threat of punishment. Okay, it's more than that. How do we get the donkeys to go do stuff? Sorry? That's a carrot. Exactly. Other donkeys. Now, I live in Berlin. And in Berlin, so I've got my two sons, and we're there, and we've got the farm. There's a farm where there's wild horses and donkeys, and there's 10 donkeys in the field. We're throwing out carrots, but it turns out the donkeys don't speak English or German. What a surprise. They also can't see very well because it's so far away, they don't know if it's a carrot, or they have no clue what it is. The thing is that 3 of the 10 donkeys, they hear something. Maybe they see a movement, and their ears prick up. But one donkey, now this is very important, she is a deviant donkey. And her deviance is curiosity. What is it? I don't know. Let's go look. So she is now deviating from the herd, and her deviance is driven by curiosity, and she just wants to find out what it is. I don't know. Well, the other 4 donkeys, the next ones around her, maybe she always does cool donkey stuff. Do you remember last week when you found that out? So maybe she always has to be the first one. Like, I mean, right now, if somebody's doing AI in 2 years' time, she's the first one doing that as well. It doesn't matter. So the next 4 donkeys, they have a choice. Do we sit here and do what we're doing now, which is eating here, chewing grass, kind of bored? Or do we go and follow her and maybe it's interesting? Well, the next 4 donkeys, in this particular case, they follow her. but they don't know why. Carrot stick, I don't know, we're just following her. The next 4 donkeys, now, they were in the majority beforehand. The next 4 donkeys think, well, wow, everybody's gone, we should go there too. And then there's one last donkey now, he's been facing the other direction. Maybe he was actually the first donkey there, whatever, a few hours ago. But he doesn't see everybody moving. He was like rocking off in his own little airbud world. And he looks up, he's all alone. Oh, there they are. Okay. So why do the donkeys do things? Well, you have a certain dynamic of the deviant donkey, and then you have everybody else follows. Humans are exactly the same. Now, what do I mean by that? In a year's time, if you as the deviant here, I'm like anybody here is a deviant kind of by definition, if you've done your thing well, this time next year, this place is full. And this time in 2 years' time, you need to get a bigger room. Why? Because people will be looking around and, I mean, so if you work for Beeline, how much money do you get per month? 400 euros, 600 euros? Well, now let's imagine that your startup has done very well and you're pulling in 4,500 euros a month. Like, how do I earn 10 times more money? I'm just as smart as you, and. So right now, your deviance and your success will pull more and more people in. I see this can easily happen in Armenia, and I think particularly as they have this huge diaspora community as well, and you're totally a trading nation. I mean, it's like you guys are everywhere, and girls. So right now, what it means then is that you have the potential to become really good at basically generating revenue and income internationally, and then you bring it back here. Now, this seems to be a lovely place, so there's no need to move to Silicon Valley. It's not as interesting as it used to be. You can stay here and earn all of your money internationally and have a phenomenal life. So yeah, this is what I see as the upside from Armenia. And I've only been here 1 day, so maybe I have a different answer in 2 hours' time.
Great, Mark. Thanks you. So another question I would like to ask is, with all this technology development worldwide, considering that you are very actively participating in the World Economic Forum and contributing to the development of the economy in general, what do you think about all these technology buzz things like blockchain, AR, ML? So where the world is going, and which of these buzzes are actually bubbles or not so much bubbles, or to what extent are there bubbles, and what these startups need to consider, yeah. And yeah, what's your vision on all this, considering your experience?
So I have a 25-year plan to change the world. I'm in year 11. So I've already made my predictions of what technologies are going to be interesting going out into the future. And so right now, and I update it every year. Things that I see. Blockchain, if we use the term blockchain in 12 months' time, nobody will use blocks and none of us will use chains. It's a shitty technology. It's just crap. It's terrible technology. Now, because you can do many of the things with a SQL Server database and an API. Right now, it was flavor of the month, and where blockchain became super popular is that it was the first technology created as money. Bitcoin was the first practical use of, and because people had Bitcoin for like nothing, and then it became worth a lot. So the thing is that right now, the technology challenges that blockchain face are not small at all. There are a lot of companies that raise money out of ICOs. I don't know if ICOs ever came to this country, but most of them were fraud. Many of the economic designs were just total nonsense. But there was like, the emperor had no clothes, but you were paid $1,000 to go see him naked. And everyone was like, yeah, sure, whatever. So blockchain I wouldn't be a huge fan of. I do see, things that are interesting in the future. I don't know what type of synthetic biology. So it becomes interesting. So DNA, CRISPR, taking, so one of my favorite videos, and I still have to find it, is there's a company called Memphis Meats that they've taken the feather of a chicken, they've taken a cell of a feather cell of a chicken, they've then turned the feather cell into a stem cell of a chicken, and they've turned the stem cell of a chicken into meat and protein cells. So right now, we'll be eating chickens that are alive. That, I think, is awesome technology, because ultimately, as a planet, we have to stop eating animals, because about 40% of agricultural production goes to feed the animals that we eat. And they keep pooping all the time and other stuff. So that's interesting. What I do see is that I mean, it's tricky being in like a tiny market, and you're fortunate that nobody will ever try to invade the Armenian market because you're too small. So right now, you always need to take the sort of unusual thinking that you have to work out what do customers want that they'll give money for. The other is that if you look at the technology talent here, AI, machine learning, robotics will be massive, absolutely massive. Now, ultimately, we know that the factory of the future will have one human and a dog. And a dog. A dog. And the reason is that the man is there to feed the dog, and the dog is there to stop the humans touching the machines.
And what about AR or VR, those kind of technologies? What's your vision on that? So besides AI, ML, like augmented reality, virtual reality, is it?
It's interesting, I mean, particularly if you look at, how many of you have ear pods? How many of you are using them now? And you've got long hair, I couldn't tell. You're like, So right now, when AirPods came out, I don't know if you remember the memes about how stupid AirPods were? And then everybody's using them. So you have the socialization of technology. So right now, AR is one of those things which is about to be socialized that people will use it more. I think it's harder for the glasses, like there's the Google glasses. Now, one of my buddies was the guy in the shower with Google glasses saying, hey, look at me, I'm wearing Google glasses. So I think VR, I mean, I wouldn't be investing in VR right now because it's too expensive. Because if you need to get a $3,000 laptop machine and then you need to get a $2,000 unit and you've got cables and. So it's pretty much there's a next generation. However, as entrepreneurs, one of the rules is if somebody's giving you money for stuff, take it. Because you can always do something else later. So if there's money coming in, you can do that. Some technology ideas.
Actually, there are a few questions I want to ask, but just because we're a little bit short of time, I want to do this, I want to ask the audience. So, when you are telling about yourself, there are several very diverse ways and things you're doing. So I would suggest you just now to tell those few other things, and then we see what we're going with the next questions, okay? I know something about spying, I know something about umbrellas, and whatever is under that, and what else? The entrepreneurship and author and stuff, it's straightforward.
Thank you. So quite often when I introduce myself, because we need to have an introduction, now remember I don't do small talk. So when I introduce myself, I would say, hi, my name is Mark. I'm a professor at a business school. I was a spy for a year, Libya and Syria, and I'm writing a book on open relationships. Open relationships. Now, what happens is that this is a filtering question, and it's also a totally true thing. So right now, 25% of people say, interesting, so where are you based? What they mean to say is that they've listened to what I've said and they don't care about a single word, and they just basically filter you out. Fine. I will never speak to these people ever. The next 25% of people say, interesting, so which business school do you teach at? They've listened to everything you've said, they want to pick the safe option, but also they're trying to work out, did I go to a better business school than you, and I'm better than you? Social pecking order. The other 50%, I'm sure probably most of you in this other group, which are saying, what the hell did you just say? Spy, open relationship. Actually, can we do a quick test? Who here would like to hear open relationships? Okay. 2. How many here would like to hear spy? Actually, more spy here. So normally, if this was an internationally diverse group, it would be 1/3 spy and 2/3 relationships. But in fact, everybody wants to hear everything.
Okay, so...
The relationship one is more fun.
I think we shouldn't ask any questions about your spy career or what. So the conversation ends there, or what?
I retired. Well, so in fact, what I was trying to do is that I have a 25-year plan to change the world. To do this, you must not accept reality, and you need to do things differently. For the first 3 years, I was doing plausibly ridiculous projects, but I was really pushing back the boundaries of what is possible. And I was helping coordinate the first NATO strikes to stop NATO killing civilians in Libya. And yet I didn't speak to a single person in Libya, and I didn't know anybody in military intelligence, and that took me 3 hours to organize. What the hell? And it still is true. So I did those things to push back the boundaries of what is possible. Does that mean the relationship one is next? Nobody's interested in that. And he took, I can have a chat with this guy later. Unless anybody want to have questions?
Okay. Nothing public, Stefan. Okay.
Okay, I mean, I will. So I have a website called markturrell.com, and that's got all of my different projects on it. One of the things that I have is a meetup called the Black Umbrella Society. And this is because relationships are an incredible source of happiness and a great source of misery, sometimes with the same person and often on the same day. Right now, we will be alive until we're about 100. If we can live for another 10 years, we basically kind of won't be dead. Right now, this monogamous marriage structure that we've all basically been signed up to is only 150 years old. And right now, at least in my community, the adultery rate's about 55-60%, and women are only 10% less than men. And we have to live in a world without lying, because our bloody phones track everything. And what I realize is that lying is the actual problem. Now, lying is a big problem we have in the world in general, but in relationships, this is a really, really big issue, because lying is cancer and it destroys everything in an irreversible way. So how can we have more honest, open discussions? Now, sure, it's fun. I mean, it's not a swingers club. It's a discussion forum to have a conversation.
We'll keep it for...
Do I put my costume on now?
Yeah, the black umbrella one. Mark, just because we are short of time, I'm really interested in what would your advice be to our startups, for our community, who is going to start a business or who is in a business, what they need to pay attention to, and based on your visiting more than 66 countries in the world, what is the same pattern everywhere that you saw in doing the business and with the startups that you can also advise here? What, they need to consider in doing their job?
So I'm going to start off with the American advice. Okay, so this is the American advice, and we know in the American advice there are 3 things that are important. Okay, we're ready. The first thing is that there are 3 things that are important, and then we repeat that twice. Stupid! Being in business is unbelievably hard. There's like at least 1,000 things that's going to trap you, at least. You have a co-founder. The co-founder decides they've got a better job, but they're going to leave you. Fine, and then they take your code. You have a developer. The developer says, the code is ready, give me 40,000 euros right now or I delete everything. What the hell? It's 2 things. I had one thing where I had one of my employees, recently divorced, snuck into the office during a customer meeting with his new girlfriend, who was an alcoholic nymphomaniac. His description, had sex with her in the ladies' bathroom, where had customers in the other place, boasting about it to the rest of the staff. Okay, and he's my best salesperson. What do you do? It's unbelievably hard having a business. So, I mean, the fact that any of you is even trying this, you're obviously start raving bonkers, like completely mad. But clearly we know there's at least 20 or 30 things you need to do, at least. So right now, there aren't really that many shortcuts. If there is a shortcut, I would be really suspicious. Key things, though, you need to let the market decide. It's very easy to fall in love with your project, and you know that it's going to work. In fact, you know that it's going to work, that when you speak to customers and they say they don't want it, they're wrong. No, they're not. Money, and like another thing, a business is like, I mean, if you've looked at the TED Talks and you've looked at the startup grind things, you probably believe in passion. And you're probably like, I mean, if you're passionate about the business and you put like loads of effort in, you're going to make it work. That's not true. It's bullshit. It's bullshit that we tell to our staff to get them work cheaper for longer hours. It's bullshit. Businesses ultimately are about numbers, and the numbers are cash. So right now, you need to earn more money than you spend. Investors are horrible. I've been an investor. They're horrible people. So if you can try to do your business without investor money, that's great. If you have projects from the European Union and the GIZ, they are brilliant people to work with. And use all the money they have very precious, because they aren't investors. They're not going to find a way that if you're successful, oust you and your co-partner and put you in $200,000 a legal bill. Because they actually genuinely, this is a mission thing that they're doing. So right now, I really honestly believe these are great programs, but use every penny as though it's precious. Don't think I've got 50,000, it's easy, I'll make a PowerPoint deck and I get another 250. No. Use every single penny as though you'll never have it back ever again. I used to travel twice a month transatlantic. Now, I took my company public, and on paper I was worth 10 million, and I had 200 grand sitting in a bank account. I had to go, my family moved to Berlin because I was traveling so much. My wife said, well, okay, I'm married as well. She said, look, there's no point us living in Boston if you're not going to be there anyway. So she moved to Berlin, where my son was 1 year old and then I had another one. So I was twice a month flying transatlantic to go to my office in Boston per month. I would always fly economy. Why? Because to pay for a business class flight is $5,000 or $6,000. If I sit in economy, it's $1,000. I'd rather buy 2 laptops for my staff. So there's this stupid arrogance that people get when they get a little bit of money. This will not make you a good entrepreneur, it'll just make you an arsehole. And you'll run out of money as well. And then you just be like a pathetic arsehole. So just practical tips.
Thank you, Mark. I think this was a fun discussion, and now I want to give the chance to the audience, to our guests, to ask those questions, because we can go on and on and on, but people may have some other types of questions. So let's see what we're getting. Any questions?
I have 2 questions. One of them is, I'm really glad you came here, and this is a stupid one. So I'm really glad you came here, but during the introduction, Narina mentioned that it's not the first time you got asked, and you kept on postponing. And now that I kind of think I know that your motivations aren't obvious always, and obviously it's not about changing the life of 30-something people here and adding them to the list of the 4 million. What made you change your mind and actually come to a country like Armenia? And again, we're glad that you came. And then the not stupid question, given all of the products and the projects that you had throughout your life, business or no non-business, which one stuck into your head as maybe the favorite one, or the one that you've learned from the most, the most important one to you? Could you tell a bit about that one and why it's important?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so coming here, so I say yes to everything. So I did actually say yes the previous 2 years. The first year, I think the timing didn't work out. And the second year, I had no cash. I had nothing. I took my company public. I was worth 15 million euros as my max. But then one of my investors took over the company. I ended up with 3 years of lawsuits, went through $400,000 worth of legal fees. Lawyers are all scum. They can be nice humans, but when they're lawyers, they're all scum. But that meant that I had nothing. Now, that particular time, the last time that I was meant to be here, I was... I was actually owed $20,000, but I just hadn't been paid. So I can't physically go. I'm not going to borrow extra money to go, so I can't do it now. But as soon as there's an opportunity, I immediately say yes. So, the larger thing about not just being here for the 30, I'm fascinated by, let's say, countries like this where I thought I'm a student of revolutions. Actually, no, I'm a practitioner of revolutions. I might have done a couple. It's good. And when I remember looking at the news when Armenia started popping up, and I'm thinking, this is weird. This is very, very weird, but in a really good way. The thing is, though, in a country like this where this weird good thing happens, you've got 18 months max. Because right now, a system will normally revert back to what it was, because that's how it works. So right now, you have a very narrow window to do some interesting things. And right now, if I can help in any way, and I had some meetings this morning, and I'm hoping to have more meetings than this, there's a lot of stuff that you can do in this room and others can do to help generate jobs, employment, in a sustainable way, environmentally friendly way, and. And it's people like you that are almost the cohort that can go off and go do this thing. So it's fast, and I would have said yes anyway. No, and they're very persuasive. Very persuasive. If I look at, let's say, the thing that I most love, actually, I'll give two things right now. So the first was the product that I created when I was 24. How old was I? 29. And that was a product called Idea Central. So I worked out how to tap into the brain power of the masses by giving them a time-limited period to ask questions. I pretty much invented suggestion boxes. So collaborative problem solving, collective intelligence. I invented this sitting in my kitchen table to get hundreds of thousands of people to focus on problems, to solve problems. So that was the one that I invented, and that's what I took public. Actually, no, I've got then three. So then the next one that I'm working on now, and I've just got a prototype if anybody's interested, I've worked out how to use the power of the masses to solve any problem in less than an hour. It's like Tinder for networks. So if anybody's in, so it's called Vork, happy to share that. But then the one that I'm like super curious and interested, like the next stage, so there's two ways of making it rain. No, artificially. One is chemicals, and the other is electricity, just the way that the sun does it. Our Earth is suffering because there are fewer days of rainfall, and when it rains, it's very severe. So right now, we have an existential problem on our planet because we can live without food for 3 weeks. We can live without internet for 4 hours, okay. But being really, really honest, if we don't have water, we're dead in 3 days. And then the plants are dead and all the animals are dead and we're completely screwed. So right now, immigration is a big problem because people have no water. So I found some technology from Germany that was doing rainmaking using ionization. And right now I'm working with them to help spread this technology out around the world, because then over a large scale we can actually apply very quick working technology, all based on science. I don't know how magnets work. I know that they work. I know there's science behind magnets. I know that magnets aren't magic. I don't know entirely how the rainmaking stuff works, but there's a ton of science around how do you make it rain. But having this type of technology go out around the world, and there are many others as well, these are game changers around how we can change our planet really quickly, for better. So yeah, so those are the, thank you for inviting me, and my favorite technologies. Good questions. If you pass the mic behind you.
So I actually got a question, but before that, I was actually browsing your website, and when you said about blockchains and about shitty technologies, I actually discovered a funny thing that says, most recently we've been advising on the use of cryptocurrencies and tokens to fund and develop businesses and non-profits. And I was like, wow, what happened? Opinion change and whatever. But my question is actually like, what your advice would be to somebody who actually has an idea to, what is the right moment to stop working on that idea and to kind of like pivot the idea, like as an entrepreneur? What would be your advice and thoughts on that? So thanks.
And right now, so I created a meetup called TICA, so Tokens, ICOs, and Cryptocurrency Meetup. Now, I've taken a company public before, and I'm fascinated by new financial instruments. So as soon as this thing popped up, and a few of my friends started to do some interesting things, guys that are people that I trusted, I became super interested, but as soon as I dug in, I realized this is going to be an absolute nightmare. Not blockchain particularly, but the crypto stuff was going to be a nightmare. The blockchain thing is more because I build technology. I've been building software since I was, 23. And SQL Server databases, you know how they work. Relational data. But this blockchain stuff is just there are many use cases where you could make it work, but you can almost always do it with other technologies. And so it's totally a hype cycle thing right now for the blockchain. Now, it doesn't mean to say it's bad. And there will be some companies where it'll really work. And there'll be some companies that'll be funded, and they may be unicorn billion-dollar companies. But let's say, so you're saying, when do you stop working on an idea, is thinking about it? So what I like to have is a line in the sand. So when I have an idea or a project that I'm working on, I need to get feedback from the market to say, is anybody going to buy this? Can I make money out of it? Now, part of the reason is that time is precious. Very, very precious. We don't know when we're going to be dead, but it's guaranteed we're going to be dead. So right now, do we really want to waste our time doing stuff that is kind of pointless? So right now, what I do very often, so let's say I'm working on 3 ideas at the same time, but I don't know which one is going to work. I remember I was working on an air pollution project, and I decided that either I get $300,000 from the city of Hong Kong to do a project, because it looked like we would do, or I get $300,000 of investment from Deutsche Telekom, who said they would do. And if both of those happen, I'm brilliant. If one of those happens, I'm brilliant. And if neither of those happen by the beginning of September, I give up. And they didn't happen by September, so I gave up. So it's life is precious. Now, the thing though is that it's very rare to have failures in life. You have setbacks. And these setbacks teach us things, and hopefully we don't make the same mistakes again. And sometimes you're the right person doing the right stuff, but you have the wrong idea. And that's okay. Because then maybe as long as you haven't spent too much money, you can pivot, you can go into a different area. And but the key thing is you need to get feedback from the market. Now maybe it's because, when I went public, my first outside money was when I went public. So I really don't like investors very much. I like making revenue from customers. I love customer revenue. So for me, if a customer likes it and gives you money, that's the proper feedback. So getting an investor from San Francisco that wants to give you $2 million for me is, yeah, is it good?
Big applauses, thank you very much, and Mark Turrell.